For almost 20 years, green boots have been a creepy attraction near the summit of Mount Everest. No, this is not a monument or an art object. This is the body of a man who died during the ascent. Every climber climbing the north wall necessarily passed by this body, which made green boots perhaps the most famous dead man on Everest. This man was one of 8 climbers whose lives were lost in a snowstorm in May 1996. And the case of green shoes is far from the only one. There are hundreds of bodies on Everest. It's just that most of them are less well known to become a creepy attraction. The highest mountain on the planet is littered with corpses, and no one is trying to remove them, because everything is quite difficult. And yes, it's not about once upon a time, but about now. If you suddenly, God forbid of course, go to Everest and die, your body will not be taken away. A little coffee and more details. And I haven't forgotten yet. As usual, I gently remind you not to forget to put likes if you forget to do it at the end of watching. Every year, thousands of people from all over the world flock to Mount Everest in the hope of conquering the most famous peak in the world. And not only the most famous, but also the highest. The height of Mount Everest above sea level is 88.49 meters. Not everyone manages to accomplish this feat and return alive, or at least just go back. But sometimes the living come for the dead. On October 2nd, 1979, German climber Hanaor Schms descended from the summit of Mount Everest along the southern route. At an altitude of about 8,300 meters, she sat down on the ground, told her guide, "Water, water," and died. Hanaor was the 4th woman to climb Mount Everest. Her body was left lying on the mountain. For many years, the remains of Hanaor could be seen by anyone who tried to climb Mount Everest along the southern route. Her body was frozen in a sitting position, leaning against a backpack, with her eyes open and her hair blowing in the wind. It's creepy. Perhaps that's why people tried to get Hanaor off the mountain. At first, they were 2 Nepalese climbers, Police Inspector Yogendra Bahadur Thapa, who was 36 years old, and his guide Ong Dorji, aged 35. They wanted to lower Hanaor's body during an expedition by the Nepalese police, but both died on October 24, 1984. Moreover, they were very experienced climbers, but even for them the task turned out to be overwhelming. Eventually, after 20 years, the wind blew the remains of Hanaor away. To date, more than 340 people have died trying to reach or return from the summit of Mount Everest. And these are just the ones that we know for sure. A little disclaimer. We can't show the bodies of the dead for ethical reasons, so we covered them with pathology bags. If you're really interested in watching everything uncensored, you can easily find information about them on the internet. However, in reality, the dead just lie on the mountain where they found themselves in their last moments. And people die there every year. Well, with a few exceptions. Just 2 years after the start of observations, there were no deaths. 1977, when only 2 people reached the summit, and 2020, when Nepal suspended issuing permits due to the pandemic. Otherwise, Everest regularly takes the lives of those who try to conquer it. Until 1996, 1 in 4 climbers died during the ascent, and in 1996, 1 in 7 died. The earliest recorded deaths date back to 1921, when 2 people died on their way to Mount Everest during a British reconnaissance expedition. The name of one of them is not even listed anywhere, just an unnamed porter. The second was Alexander Kellos, a British scientist, but both of them didn't even reach Everest. The victims of the mountain itself appeared only the following year, when 7 people died. They were all rapists caught in an avalanche during the new British expedition. However, no one knows for sure how many corpses are on Everest today. In 2015, a study was conducted and it was assumed that there were more than 200 bodies on the mountain. It sounds like Everest is ready to kill anyone. In fact, although Everest is considered the mountain with the highest number of deaths, it does not have the highest mortality rate. The reason is that Everest, as the highest mountain on the planet, is very popular and is a coveted peak for many climbers. A lot of people just come up here, or try to, hence so many deaths. There are more than 10 possible causes of death that are commonly found on Mount Everest. Avalanches come first. They claimed the lives of at least 77 people. The second line in this creepy top is occupied by falls. 71 people died because of them. And finally, altitude sickness. She killed at least 36 climbers. This is because the human body simply cannot function normally for a long time at such an altitude. We are not physically adapted to such conditions. Hypoxia or oxygen starvation begins, and this is perhaps the most critical factor that dramatically worsens the health of climbers. When there is a lack of oxygen, the work of all organs is seriously disrupted. At low altitude, the disease does not manifest itself too strongly, only at the level of dizziness and shortness of breath. Such symptoms can still be dealt with, but further, as you move up, the consequences become more serious. Thoughts become confused. A person loses the ability to reason and make decisions, may lose his senses, and eventually die. In fact, it's terrible to lose consciousness at such a height while climbing when no one can help you. In general, this is a situation that practically cannot end well. But again, despite all this, Everest is not the deadliest mountain in the world. This sad title belongs to Annapurna 1 in the Himalayas of Nepal. This is the highest point of the Annapurna mountain range. The 10th highest mountain on our planet is considered the deadliest in the world, because the death rate of climbers here is about 33%. That is, for every 2 people who successfully climb a mountain and descend, 1 person dies. Out of every 100 people who try to climb, 33 do not return. K2, the 2nd highest mountain in the world, and Nanga Parbat, the 9th highest, occupy the 2nd and 3rd places in this tragic list. As for Napurnaya 1, its lethality is related to the features of the mountain itself. That is, it closes the top 10 of the highest peaks with a height of 8,091 meters, but at the same time, it is among the most difficult mountains to climb in the world. Climbers who manage to climb to the top and descend say that some sections of Annapurna 1 are even more difficult to climb compared to K2, Monolith, and even Everest. Annapurna 1 is full of Syracuse. These are such huge ice pillars, crevices, sharp ridges, and other complex elements that turn climbing into a constant game with death. And the weather is often bad there. But let's get back to the main question. Why aren't Suvarest's bodies being taken away? Well, the first problem of any such operation is obvious. Someone needs to get to the right body. Most of the deaths occurred in a section of the mountain above 7,900 meters, which is called the death zone. In addition, some of the bodies are hidden under the snow, while others lie in deep crevices. Climbers fall there during their ascents, or the wind pulls them off after death. And there is only one small 15-day window per year during which climbers can climb and descend from 8,000 meters. It is only at this time that the winds slow down and Everest can be conquered at all. To make it clear, wind speeds in the death zone often exceed 100 kilometers per hour. That is, either you collect the bodies from the mountain during these 2 weeks, or you don't collect them at all. The second problem of saving the dead is cost. It will take thousands of dollars to lower the body of the deceased. Many people simply cannot afford to take the bodies of relatives who died in the mountains. Look, to lower a body from an altitude of 8,000 meters, it takes 12 people, each of whom needs 4 cylinders of oxygen. 1 cylinder costs more than $400. That is, you will have to spend about $20,000 on oxygen alone. And even if the relatives of the deceased have enough money to pay the expenses, most private companies refuse to help get bodies out of the death zone because it's too dangerous. But there are people who still take up the task of returning the bodies. The cost of such a rescue mission in 2024 varies from $75,000 to $80,000 per body. In fact, every climber who climbs Mount Everest is legally required to have insurance covering the costs of his own rescue and recovery in the event of an accident. Death is also included in the insurance. But the problem is that this rule is not applied consistently, and extreme conditions sometimes make rescue impossible. And the body can weigh more than 100 kilos, and at high altitude, a person's ability to carry heavy loads is seriously reduced. At an altitude of 8,000 meters, even strong Sherpas can only carry up to 25 kilos, which is less than 30% of their carrying capacity at lower altitudes. Just so you understand, even lifting a candy wrapper high on a mountain is a huge effort, because it is completely frozen and needs to be dug out. The body, which usually weighs 80 kilograms, can weigh all of 150 kilograms if it is frozen and dug out along with the surrounding ice. As a result, it turns out that up to 8 rescuers are required to transport one body, and this is according to the most conservative estimates. Well, it's impossible to take the bodies away. There's obviously nowhere to bury them either, so they can just burn them so that they don't lie on public display as a terrible reminder of the danger of Mount Everest. Alas, there is not enough firewood and fuel to cremate the bodies on the mountain, and dragging all this up is frankly an absurd idea. However, there is unexpected but good news. The Nepalese government has decided to gradually remove the bodies from Mount Everest. For the first time, the cleaning company was launched in 2019. It included garbage collection and, at the same time, the removal of some of the bodies of dead climbers. It probably doesn't sound very respectful towards the dead, but as you can see, there aren't that many options. As part of this campaign, 4 unidentified bodies were lowered from the mountain in 2019, and 5 more recently in 2024. But given that there are hundreds of bodies on Mount Everest, and the death toll is constantly being updated, work is slow. Not only is it very difficult in principle, but climate change adds to the horror. It leads to the thinning of snow and ice, increasingly exposing the bodies of hundreds of climbers who died. Getting them out of there is a grim, difficult, and dangerous task. Rescuers are also people, and they too are feeling unwell. Headache, vomiting, cough, and so on. It all starts because you have to spend a lot of time at high altitude. However, the return of the bodies is paid for by the state. In 2024, the military allocated 5 million rupees, or $37,400, for the descent of each body. The price tag, let's say, is very different from the cost, which is called a private company. However, the bodies are still being lowered, or rather the body is discovered first. It then takes rescuers several hours to break the ice with axes, and sometimes they even use boiling water. The more ice there is, the longer and more difficult the job is. Thus, it took 11 hours of work in deadly conditions for the climbers to free one body, encased in ice, up to the torso. And it's not enough to get the body out, it also needs to be lowered. Often the deceased is wrapped in a bag, then placed on a plastic sled and dragged down. It took 24 hours non-stop to transport the body, believed to belong to the Czech climber, to the nearest camp, which is only 3.5 kilometers from the place of his death. The team then spent another 13 hours to lower the body to another camp below. Then the bodies are usually transported to Kathmandu by helicopter. But in the case of the Czech climber, the crew was stuck in Namche for 5 days due to bad weather, and only then, when the body is delivered to its final destination, the process of identification and burial follows. Oh, and add working at night to the piggy bank, because after the discovery of bodies, teams often work after dark so as not to disturb other climbers, not to interfere with their ascents and descents. But why did the bodies suddenly start being taken away? That is, for 100 years they just lay on Mount Everest and no one cared. What has changed? So the Nepalese authorities say it's necessary. The body is getting bigger, and now there are real fears that the mountain will simply turn into a huge cemetery. Moreover, many people climbing Mount Everest believe that they are entering a divine space. And there are corpses. It doesn't seem very divine. And finally, the most important question. If people regularly die on Everest, and it's so difficult to remove them from there, why not just ban climbing? Well, first of all, everyone is not allowed on the mountain. Before the conquest, people undergo a medical examination and special preliminary training. If a person is healthy, knows what he should be able to do, and climbing is his sensible decision, then it is strange to forbid him anything. And secondly, it's just not profitable. Everest brings Nepal tens of millions of dollars and almost as much to local guides, who take an increasing number of climbers to the mountain every year. Judge for yourself. An expedition to Mount Everest costs a climber $50,000, and this is the minimum. And if you take all sorts of additional services, for example, increases the oxygen supply, the price tag will rise to $67,500. And it's still cheap. There are companies that ask for much more. And even if you just want to climb without any help from a guide, you need to buy a permit, which can cost from $10,000 to $20,000. Such a permit only covers the cost of entering the mountain, something like an entrance ticket, and then you are on your own. But if you add the additional costs of round-trip transportation, mountaineering guides, oxygen tanks, tents, and communications equipment, then altogether it will cost more than $200,000. Who would give up such a profit? A new death record. The year 2023 broke the record for deaths on Mount Everest. 17 people were killed, according to other sources 18, and this is the largest confirmed death toll so far. In addition to deaths, in 2023, climbers saw a spike in frostbite cases and rescue calls in the middle of the mountain. Why did this happen? Well, some sources attribute this dynamic to the record number of climbing permits issued by Nepal to foreigners in 2023. There were 478 of them. And as usual, another possible reason is climate change. While it's getting hotter somewhere, it's only getting colder at the top of Mount Everest. Take the risk 30 times. Most recently, the famous mountain guide Camarita returned from Everest after his record-breaking 30th ascent. Just imagine going up there 30 times and getting ready to continue in the same spirit. Camarita first conquered Mount Everest in 1994 and has been climbing almost every year since, with the exception of 2014, 2015, and 2020. The ascent was suspended for various reasons, but each time the guide returned to the mountain, from where many were unable to descend. High-altitude delivery. In June 2024, drone delivery arrived on Mount Everest for the first time. This incredible achievement was the first mission of its kind to use drones to deliver supplies to climbers. During this test, the drone had to transport 3 oxygen cylinders and 1.5 kilograms of cargo from the Everest base camp to another camp, and then return with the waste. And of course, it can be assumed that one day drones will be able to lower the bodies of the dead from where people cannot reach. But after all, progress doesn't stand still. Mountain freshness. Everything is clear about the bodies that frighten every climber, but they are not the only ones lying on Mount Everest. Huge piles of human excrement create an unpleasant smell on the highest peak in the world, and this seriously angers local authorities. Literally tons of human excrement were thrown between Camp 1 and Camp 4 of Mount Everest. Due to the extreme conditions of the highlands, most of this waste does not decompose completely and can persist for years, preserve and smell. I'm serious. To combat this problem, the Pasankal-Hamu Rural Municipality, the local authority responsible for most of the Everest region, instructs climbers to buy special fecal collection bags at the base camp, and then, upon return, the packages are checked by the authorities. In my opinion, this is not the kind of adventure that you expect while climbing Mount Everest.